Good afternoon, Nicholas. Do you hear me? Nicholas?
Hello?
Nicholas. Yes, hello. Do you do you hear me? Good afternoon.
You okay?
Yeah, you?
Yeah, yeah. I just would like to test my presentation to see if it works because I am not sure about that.
Exactly, because of this we are there. Exactly.
Let me see. Okay. So is it fine or
Yeah, it's amazing. It's fine. But in the last webinar, there was a case that sometimes there were problems in the presentations when the speaker was showing them. So keep your attention. Sometimes maybe I will write you messages if something goes wrong. So only keep you in touch that something can happen, and but to the moment now is everything perfect as I see.
okay? Because in fact I changed my computer and everything, so I don't want there is any trouble with the presentation. So okay,
Understandable.
so that's fine. If you see the presentation right now, it's fine.
Yes, 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 I see. It's everything perfect now. So
Okay.
we are
Do
in
you
there.
do you
What?
Do you see as well my laser pen? Because sometimes I may need to highlight something.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
Only one moment. We are in the practice session, but I will not close it because we already have participants who are waiting, and I don't want to lose them. So from this, you don't need to reconnect to somewhere. From this, we will start from this page. I will start from this one. From
Okay, great.
so
That's fine.
so this practice session it will change for the real one for the webinar.
Okay, how many speakers do we have? Only
As Sophie, so I have Sonia have sent me. As I know, it's only your speaker. The second speaker is let me check. Vinita Garg, as I understand correctly. And there will be one more speaker from outside. It's Yuna. She will represent you and the other speaker, and she will take a lead on this webinar. I'm covering the technical side of the webinar.
okay. How long do you want my presentation? Long last 30 minutes is fine. 40 minutes better. What's your
1 second. Yeah, I think 30 minutes it will be perfect. If the second speaker also takes 30 minutes, but I don't understand if she's there or not. Really? You will be only one speaker for this webinar. So it will be good if you can provide and tell information for 1 hour.
Okay, I can take some questions, maybe, a couple of questions or three questions. I will try to speak slowly because I think my presentation is 30 or 40 minutes. So let's see that. I can anyway add a couple of things. So
You
don't
know,
worry.
there is a point that participants they will ask a lot of questions. Of course, we will not have a lot of time, and we have only 1 hour of presentation for this. But it would be amazing if you could answer for this question, like to share with them 15 minutes of your time, for example, in the end, 15 to 20 to answer their questions. Last time there were a lot of questions which were not been answered, and and yeah, if you can go in some moments deeply, it will be better for understanding for participants.
Yeah. Okay, fine for me.
So I think 1 hour in this case is perfect. So your presentation, 45 minutes and the questions.
Okay, no problem.
So I think I say to you a little goodbye, but we will be in connection and in touch
15
in
minutes.
15 minutes. Yes. So,
Do I need to present myself or?
I think Yuna, my colleague, will present you, but it's better to do it also by your side, by yourself.
Okay, great, I'll do it. Yeah,
Thank you. If you want something special, you can send me information by mail, for example, now, and Suyuna will tell this information about you.
no problem. It's
Okay.
fine.
If you do this, it will be perfect, really. Because from Sonia, we haven't received a lot of information about you, only name, links, etc. You turned off your microphone.
Yeah, exactly. I'll send my view and I'll send to you in a couple of
Okay,
minutes.
perfect. Thank you.
Mic check.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hi, Suyona. Hi, Nicholas.
Hi,
Hello,
Sonia.
Sonia. Hello, Suyana.
Hi, Nicholas.
Suyuna.
Yes, correct. Am I pronouncing your name right? Nicholas Tavanuti, right?
Yes,
Is
correct.
that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be moderating the session. I'll present you and then give the floor to you.
Okay, great.
So, Suyona, in the same way, we will be launching the poll that we did last time. You just first of all kick off the webinar, then we will launch poll 1, then you will introduce Nicholas, brief little bit about himself, and then he will take care of the platform. And then once his presentation is over, then we will move on to second poll before Q&A, or you can skip it either way. Either we will take it Q&A first, then we will go to the second poll. Okay.
Sounds great.
So good luck to everyone. I'll begin the webinar. Good afternoon, Sonia, by the way.
Hi. Actually.
Hi, everyone. We'll just wait for 2-3 minutes and we'll begin the session. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on resilient supply chains, lessons from global crisis for public health systems, presented by UN Institute for Training and Research and Empower School of Health. My name is Suyuna. I'm joining from the UNITAR's office in Geneva, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for this session today. The session will explore key lessons learned from the global crisis and actionable strategies to strengthen public health systems. We have a keynote speaker who will share his expertise and insights, and we encourage you all to engage throughout the session. I appreciate you all leaving your greetings and introducing yourself and your country in the chat. But before we begin, a quick housekeeping note. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen, not in the chat. So you have at the bottom of your screen Q&A tool. I'd also like to just ask for 2-3 minutes of your time to fill out a short poll that should be appearing on your screen right now. This will help us to get to know you better, where you're joining from, your background, and your interests. So the polls should be on your screen. Please fill out the form. We'll dedicate 2-3 minutes to this. let's take a quick look at the results so far. So most of our participants are male. The popular age group is 30 to 40, followed by 40 to 50, mostly joining us from the Africa and the Middle East, and the rest of Asia. The participants from South Asia and Europe and Americas as well. The academic background mostly is in pharmacy diploma, with a bachelor's degree in it. There is pharmacy masters as well. Some are joining with a background in public health, management, logistics and supply chain, among other backgrounds. Most of the participants joining us have over 15 years of experience, followed by the second popular group, which is 6 to 10 years. And the sectors they're working in, mostly the NGOs and the national government, followed by private sector. And the final area of work is the supply chain, relevant to our session today, and the management. Mostly they work in the hospitals, wholesale, among other organizations. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I would like to remind you as well, the Q&A tool is available. Please leave your questions there and we'll address them towards the end of the session. Okay. Great results. We have participants, it's very much aligned to our usual audience demographic. It's wonderful to see such a diverse group joining today. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Nicholas Tavanuti. Mr. Tavanuti is a procurement and supply chain management expert with an extensive experience in strategy, assessment, and implementation across INGOs, UN agencies, and international foundations, with a proven track record in multi-million-dollar procurement, supply chain optimization, and crisis response. He has led many large-scale programs for UNOPS, UNDP, and MSF, and he managed emergency logistics during the COVID-19 pandemic and built impactful partnerships with the Global Fund, Gavi, and governments worldwide. Mr. Tavanuti, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you hear me. So I will start to share my presentation, and let me know if you can see it. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, great. So today we're gonna speak about the resilient supply chain and lesson learned from a global crisis for public health system. So what do we mean by supply chain resilience? Many of our supply chain already have resilience. If you are working in let's say in a public sector, in a pharmaceutical companies, most of us are familiar with the concept of buffer stock, for example. If there is a delay in the supply, for example, we still have some buffer stock or some security stock we can manage. That's a form of resilience. Unfortunately, in our supply chain, this is the only type of resilience we have right now, or at least we know right now. We need to move far beyond this passive resilience, where the supply chain becomes agile, and let's say not the supply chain can recover from a shock, but predict, anticipate a situation that can be a problem and mitigate it before it happens. We call this kind of approach risk management. We will see that later on. What do we mean by crisis? Here you have a definition of crisis. You have many types of crisis, of course. You have conflicts, you have disaster, you have main crisis, you have pandemics, you have a disaster plus made-man crisis. For example, if you remember Fukushima, okay, it was first a tsunami, and after he scratched one plant, nuclear plant, and this nuclear plant was not well conceived, well built, and that create a catastrophe. So we have a disaster plus man-made crisis. So this is the kind of crisis we are facing nowadays. Nowadays, we are facing conflicts all over the world. And 4 years ago, if you remember, or a little bit more, we faced the COVID-19. Here you have some kind of crisis we faced before the COVID-19. As you can see, at the one of the most important, let's say, event we have to face are hackers, are problem we may face using our computers. If our computers are not well protected, we may have all data destroyed, and this is a crisis. We may face a huge problem if we are working for the government or for the private sector. So one of the most, let's say, event we may face or we are facing right now are this one. Of course, we are facing hurricane, we are facing typhoon, depending the place you are on Earth, and that creates some issues on our overall supply chain. So this is the list of one of the crises you may face in your country or in your area. So the public health supply chain was already highlighted stress before the COVID, because now we are going to speak about the COVID, because the COVID was a lesson learned for all of us, or maybe not. So we will see that later on. Before the COVID hit us, our supply chain was already in poor state. When we look at the report of many bodies, especially from the United Nations in general, we were failing getting supplies to the patient. Even if we have the money, even if we have the stocks, we were not getting the supply to where we need it. We were failing to meet the Sustainable Development Goal. We already failed to meet the Millennium Development Goals, and we are now failing to meet the SDG. One of the reasons is our supply chain is performing poorly. If we had a better supply chain, we could, let's say, save up to 6 million lives. This was before the COVID hit us. So what the COVID was serious? Yes, of course it was serious. Everyone talk about PPE, personal protective equipment. Before the COVID, did you know what was PPE? Probably yes, if you are working in a pharmaceutical company. But did you know what it was before the COVID? Anyway, to get PPE during the COVID was a nightmare. But other item was as well a disaster, and nothing to see with the COVID. Let's talk about contraceptive, for example. Nothing to see with the COVID, but it was very complicated to get contraceptive in some countries. And what's about malaria? The malaria the same. Malaria doesn't have anything to do with the COVID-19, but because of our supply chain was very poor, the impact of the COVID-19 impact other diseases. And what we said after the COVID said, okay, we can allow this to happen again. We can allow one supply chain disruption to affect the whole public health system. It's what we said during the COVID and after the COVID. So what you can see in this graph, in here, let me show you. In this one, okay, that's still after the COVID, the stock in the central warehouse, in Africa, for example, are still in a medium risk in here. And the pink one, that's mean it's high risk. So again, we are talking about HIV, TB, and malaria. It's just before the pink, nothing to do with the COVID medicines. What does it mean? That means that before the COVID hit us, we already have shortage of essential medicines. The US FDA, you know that, mentioned that currently we have 100 medicine shortage. So we had a poor performance before the COVID. Just have a look about this one. This one is a preparedness plan. It's the list of all the countries who have preparedness plan. The problem is out of 6 criteria, 3 were not well prepared by 50% of the countries. And 50% of these countries, that's in here, represent 75% of the population. That means 75% of the population all over the world were at risk. So this is a very interesting, let's say, link. So if you have the opportunity to check this preparedness plan Just go ahead. It's very interesting, and you will learn a lot about what does it mean preparedness plan. So why we were not resilient? Well, that's because we had another lack of balance. Balance between what? Between efficiency and resilience. More efficient, that means just-in-time management. We got the supply just in time, sufficient amount without too much buffer stock. We just keep enough. We order just enough. We still have less personnel to manage the stock or to work on the supply chain management. This is efficient. It's cost efficient, but it's not resilient. We increase buffer stock, we become more, let's say, resilient and less efficient. So there is some kind of competition between resilient and efficient in our operation. Efficiency to reduce cost or resilience, and we are prepared for disruption, like the COVID-19 or any other disruptions. The problem is for the last, let's say, 20 years, nearly, everyone is buying 90% of their pharmaceutical product from India. And around in India, you have around 6 manufacturers. So it reduces cost, of course. It's efficient, but it's not resilience. That's globalization. We had a warning, let's say 5 years ago. The WHO made a preparedness plan for the avian influenza. All the country produced the plan, but only 4 countries implemented the plan. And when the COVID strikes the world, they have no PPE. Nobody was ready. Maybe only 4 countries were ready. We are failing to plan. That's the main issue. So nobody sit and said, "Oh, we will become more efficient, then resilient." It was not planned. The situation was ignored. We increased our volume over the past, let's say, the past 15 years, but we didn't increase the funding of the personnel, the funding of the training, the funding of having a better warehouse facilities or trucks. Yeah, it was efficient, but not resilient. We didn't plan anything. It was a matter of fact. For example, you are maybe all pharmacist, or you are working in a health system. So you know what is API, is an active pharmaceutical ingredient. The problem we had and we faced, it's 80% of the API are coming from China. And as I told you, 90% of the product are coming from India. And India buy maybe 80%, 90% of the API from China. And when China closed because of the COVID, there was no more API available. So that's mean no more product. And when it's no more product, they close the production line. And when India closed, you have absolutely no more product. And I'm talking about all the products you need, like paracetamol, like HIV, TB, and malaria products as well. So that was a big problem. For example, for Malaysia, Malaysia produced gloves. 100% of the gloves were coming from Malaysia. But why? You can produce gloves all over the world, in other places in Africa, in Asia, in South America. So why 100% of the gloves were coming from Malaysia? And when Malaysia just closed the doors, no more gloves. So after the COVID, you have another publication who said, okay, we have to become more resilient. But when I look around, and probably in your country, you may have a look as well, I don't see anything happening. Do you? It seems we are still buying the same sources. Procurement methods are still the same. Didn't change. Emergency stockpile is not happening. Maybe a little bit more buffer stock than before, but nothing changed a lot. Maybe you have a different experience, but depending on country. Last time I had an expert session because with Empower, when we are doing expert session, that's been expert session for students who are following PGD courses or master courses of Empower. we had a session, expert session on risk management. And some of the students say, yeah, in my country, nothing changed. Others said, yeah, slightly changed. Others say, yes, some change. So what's happened in your country? After the COVID, did your country change the way of perceiving, let's say, what's happened with the COVID? Was it being shocked? Was it a big shock for your country, for your population? Did you change anything? That's a question you need to maybe to ask. So why we are not increasing resilience? Why we are acting like that? Let's say, well, people are dismissing the COVID, like if it never happened. We have this managing term we are using, black swan event. You know, when you have swan, most of them are white, and sometimes you have a black swan event. It's a rare event. And you have a book here. You can download this book or buy this book if you can. And it means that once every 100 years, okay, something happened, like the COVID. The people say, oh, that was the COVID. It will never happen again. So we don't need to change our habits or to invest money because the resilience costs money. If you buy more buffer stock, you will have to spend more money. So we will see the budget increasing and the finance people say, oh, come on, I mean, the budget is increasing, we don't have money, we cannot do that. And why do we want to do that? Because it was a black swan event. We will see how the resilience is a cost effective using, maybe you know, Kali Dali. So was a COVID just a black swan, even which happened every 100 years? I don't think so. I don't think so. We have warning in the past about some events, and it was not a black swan. So saying that it will never happen, I think it's a big mistake. So we need to be careful in using some kind of concept and terms which make, let's say, the people not receiving the message of what's happened. Let's see the next slide, and I will explain to you. Here you have, for example, um, the deadliest pandemic in history. The COVID was not a black swan. You see here, you have all the pandemic in history. The COVID, I think, is probably number 12, is around here. I cannot see very well. So it's here, you know? So imagine in the past what we have. We have a lot of pandemics. So it's the COVID-19 was not the first one. It's one among others. The COVID was not the first pandemic we had. Many countries produce a preparedness plan, but never implemented about future pandemic. So be prepared for the next one because it will happen. We don't know when, but it will. Just have a look about this deadly pandemic in history. How do we achieve resilience? Advocate. How to advocate? Know your subject. It's very simple. When you want to talk about something, you need to know what you are talking about. So you need to advocate. But advocate is not enough. You need to be a leader. Why? Because being a leader means people are ready to follow you. It's what we try to achieve with Empower. We try to empower an UNITAR as well because we are conducting PGD and master courses together. We are trying to create or to wake up your leadership who is sleeping inside you. So once you are become a leader, you are able to advocate. It's very complicated, but you need to understand that it's very important to advocate. And after, we will speak about that later on. Risk management approach. What does it mean? We'll see later. You need to understand the cost of a stock out of the, let's say, life-saving medicines. In extreme case, of course, someone is dying because of the stock out. What the cost of the death? Well, you have some company, they calculate it, and they use a concept called Kali Dali, which is a health economic concept. And in the private sector, the cost of stock out, it's easy. Private sector, you lose money. you don't sell it. But when we are talking about health system, public health system, the cost of the stock out is death. So it cannot happen. We are talking about Kali and Dali. You have the definition of Kali Dali. It's more or less the same approach, a little bit different, but more or less the same approach. So the World Bank, they try to calculate how much will cost, for example, the first line of ARV treatment. It costs around, I don't know, 350, depending the place we are. And the British Medical Journal, they calculate using DALI the approach, the cost of a death in case of stock out. And you see, it's $28,000. So you see why people are suffering, eventually they are dying, less of income, etc. So they calculate you have $350 treatment against 28,000 treatment. Sorry, 28,000 death. Sorry. So what does it mean for PSM? It's very simple. Here you have a calculation. Let's say a treatment of IRV costs $120. You have a stock out because of one reason or another. Well, your patient will die, and that will cost $28,000 because you have to add all the cost of this death. Adding buffer stock is very cost effective if you compare to these two data. Even in some, if it's some expires, that's not a problem. Compare that. Stockpiles can be very effective. Here you have another example of TB medicine in Philippines. So when you see, for example, all the data here, it's amazing. I mean, amazing. It's scary because of the stock out. All the consequences because of a stock out. And you know, right now in 2025, I'm pretty sure that many countries have stock out, face stock out. So imagine the consequences for you are managing TB, you are managing malaria or HIV. So that means when you have stock out, you have chances to develop things, events, death, or more developing additional TB resistance. So be very careful in do not underestimate the stock out. And you need to understand the balance between classic approach and the balance approach. This is something very important in terms, let's say, of procurement or in terms of advocacy. Because when you are working with in a private sector or even in a public sector, in health sector, the people say, wait, we want fast, cheap, and good. Well, that's not possible. You cannot have things coming to your place on the fast way, on cheap way, on a good way. You need to have let's say, a balanced approach to have something agile, cost effective, and normal quality. You don't need the best one, the good one. So have this approach. And this approach will help you to mitigate the risk and will help you to, let's say, strengthen your supply chain. How to define a risk? Well, the risk, it's a situation involving exposure to danger. So what is a risk? A risk is a function with two variables, probability, consequences. What does it mean? That means when you have a probability of an event to happen, you have consequences. And what you have to do is to manage the consequences, which are all the time negative. So this is how we define the notion of risk. How to avoid risk? Well, we need to manage the risks. Here you have some model of risk management. You have 5, 6, 7. If you are curious, you can have a look about each of the model. Usually in our situation or what we teach in Empower School of Health and UNITAR, we try to teach ISO 31000. It's a risk management framework we use for everything. So that means to have our supply chain more resilient, we use this model to ensure that we can predict the risk, we can manage the risk, we can accept the risk or reject the risk, and to mitigate the risk. This makes our supply chain more resilient. Don't forget, the supply chain, it's a very complex, let's say, not a job, but let's say a very complex sum of activities. You have a lot of activities in the supply chain, and we have to manage all the activities at all level, in central level, in lower level, etc. So it's very complex, and you need to use a model to manage and mitigate the risks. Here you have some kind of risk focus and risk models. I don't say that you need to follow these models according to the risks. The best way sometimes to, let's say, have two type of models and try to combine these models. So I give you opportunity to have the list of this model, to know this model, and to download probably the models and the manuals. It's uh, very positive for you to manage the supply chain and to become much more resilient. Okay, so what does it need for healthcare procurement and supply chain? What you need to do is you need to change the way to manage your supply chain, to manage the first activity of the supply chain. That's been the product selection. Which kind of product you will select? Be careful on that, because if you select the wrong product, after that you will receive this product, but as you define a wrong product, you will have the wrong product, but you will have it. And you will do what with that? Nothing. So the supply chain starts with a product selection, quantification, procurement, delivery, storage, another delivery, and rational use of drugs or your product. Not only drugs, because procurement and supply chain management is not only drugs. It's commodities, computers, consultants, health equipment, car, construction. So bear in mind that when you work on the supply chain, it's all these activities, all these products you will have to manage. And it's what we teach in Empower and UNITAR. We teach not only health product, but any kind of product. And as a leader, you need to know not only pharmaceutical product, but you need to know everything. It's how we recognize a leader. You should be able to buy paracetamol, but you should be able to buy a computer, a car. What's involved in the risk management? This one is very interesting. You have some kind of algorithm, like for if some of you work on a computer programming, this is an algorithm. What it involves? It involves many steps, but you see, this one is communication. This is very important. You need to start by this one. You need to know the context. And after by this one, and this one, and this one. Do you accept the risk? Yes or no? No, you go there. Yes, you go there. Sorry, no, you go there. Yes, you go there. So every time you need to discuss, you need to coordinate, you need to cooperate, which is very important. When you are a leader, communication, it's the main point. You will have to communicate with various and different type of people. So to have a resilient supply chain management, as you have a lot of activity, you will have to discuss with different type of people. Your minister, your boss, doctors, professors, drivers, all these type of people. So every time communication. And as a leader, you need to adjust your communication to these people. And everyone is different. Some are white, some are black, some are tall, some are small, some are ladies, women, whatever. Different type of people. So you need some kind of empathy. You become a leader. A leader uses empathy and communication to solve issues, to manage issues, to mitigate risks, and to be resilient to any crisis. For example, what we are doing now or what we used to do before, it's to buy from a single source. You launch a tender, you buy one product, the cheapest one, you award the contract. So 100% of the products go to this supplier. Well, the problem, it's when COVID strikes us and the supplier, let's say, buy API from China and it is from India, and all the doors are closed, China and India closed, what do? You can do nothing. You can do nothing. You blocked. You don't have your product. So what is the best approach? It's to try to uh, not to have 100% of your product with one supplier, but you have to diversify your procurement. If you are in Africa, for example, you can buy in Africa, you can buy in India, you can buy in South America, you can buy in other parts of Asia. Diversify your procurement. Of course, it will cost money, but it is the price of resilience. And believe me, if anything happens, you will be happy to have several suppliers. You see, for example, here you have the lowest price is, let's say, you give 100%. Okay, 100% of your procurement go to this supplier. And China closed the borders, India closed the border, Malaysia closed the border during COVID. What's happened? Stock out. And I told you the price of stock out. However, if you diversify your procurement, 80%, 20%, 75%, 25%, why not 30%, 30%, 30% with three suppliers? Of course, it will cost money, but at least you are resilient. You won't have any issue. That means if one supplier fails, you will have two other suppliers, and they can support you in having let's say a good delivery of your product. So think about that. And of course, it's difficult to say, okay, I will increase the procurement by 25% or 50%. It's complicated. So is it practical? Well, it's difficult because if you go to see your minister and say, okay, minister, I will increase my procurement by 25% to be more resilient, he will tell you what. And you explain to him, you say, okay, according to Dali Kali, we saw the problem in having a stock out in one specific product. Advocate, become a leader, become a manager. A leader should manage and a manager should lead as well. So try to understand what to explain to your boss, to the minister. Don't be afraid. You know your business. So you need to explain, okay, we had the COVID-19. Now we have lesson learned for the COVID-19. Let's implement a new way of working. Let's implement a new way of procurement. Let's implement some kind of risk management. The risk management should be implemented correctly, and you will avoid a lot of issues, a lot. When we talk about supply chain management, risk management is linked. You cannot work on supply chain management, you cannot be resilient without managing the risk. And believe me, the risks are huge. You can have risk on very small thing you don't want to take care, and at the end it becomes very huge. So manage all the risks, categorize the risks, put a number on these risks. I cannot do that and explain to you that right now, but if you follow our courses on risk management in Empower and in UNITAR, for example, you will have a method how to, for example, to manage these risks, how to be sure that this risk can be manageable or cannot be manageable. So have a look about the different models of risk management, read them, apply them. You apply them on your professional life, on your personal life as well. It works, believe me. So what to say in summary? The summary, it's COVID-19 was not a black swan. Should be very clear. Did we have a lesson learned from the COVID-19? I'm not sure. So you take the first step and try to, let's say, change the way you perceive the supply chain management. The supply chain management is like a Cinderella, you know the tale Cinderella. it's one lady cleaning the floors. It's not very important. At the end, it becomes the major actor in the tale. So supply chain management should be considered as a Cinderella. It's very important. If your supply chain fail, doesn't understand what's happened during the COVID-19, for the next pandemic or anything happen, you won't be able to manage correctly let's say the risks and the consequences. Because again, we are not talking about a PlayStation 5 or computer, we are talking about medicines. And if you don't correctly manage the medicines, you will face consequences. It can be for your family, it can be for other patients, it can be for anyone. So be careful on that. So I would like to say thank you, but just read the 4 questions you have just below. You know, they are very important because this question um, are something you need to ask to yourself or to your country. What is your experience, for example, in risk management, in health PSM? Do you have any? Uh, After the COVID-19, is everything the same but worse? Or everything is better? So all these questions are very important. Just write them down. Ask this question in your, let's say, your uh, where you are working, in your government, in your ministry, in your company. And if you can answer correctly to this question, if you know what is a risk management, if you know how to manage a PSM, or how was COVID for you, and is it a lesson learned for you, that's a great step. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tavanuti, for that very comprehensive and informative session. These thought-provoking questions that you left by the end and discussions around how to shape resilient and effective supply chains are very crucial because it's the backbone of public health, especially in times of crisis. Thank you so much for that. And we now have time for Q&A session. Before that, I'll just quickly address the very popular question in the chat box, housekeeping related. So this webinar is intended for informational purposes only, so we are unable to issue certificates. However, Empower School of Health, as mentioned by our speaker today, in partnership with UNITAR, offers postgraduate diplomas and master's courses of science in global health procurement and supply chain management. You can get more information by the links shared via chat by my colleagues. So those are the accredited diploma courses. And the webinar will be recorded. It is being recorded right now, so you can find it on YouTube. The link will be shared as well in the chat. We can now move to the Q&A session. Thank you so much, dear participants, for your engagement. We had many questions coming in through the chat and Q&A box, which shows the level of interest in today's discussion. So let me quickly take a look. So we have post-pandemic stock out of medicines and consumables remain a challenge. Does Empower School of Health, or probably do you, Mr. Tavanuti, have any insights or recommendations about best practices and solutions to address this issue, the post-pandemic stock out of medicines, or probably if Empower School of Health courses cover that in their master's program and postgraduate diploma program?
Yes, it's very complicated to give advice because it depends the country where you are, if it's a huge country, a small country, where you are located, what are your relation with your donors, if you have any donors, or with the government. It's quite complicated. Our courses in Empower and UNITAR, yes, we cover most of the things and we provide some solution. But as I told you, it's very simple. What I try to explain to you, that you cannot make a decision, or you cannot, let's say, uh, prepare something or change something alone. You cannot do that. You need to sit down on a table with all different actors, the financial people, the M&E people, the procurement people, sit together and see, okay, something is wrong in our country or in our procurement supply chain management. What should we do? And you discuss, and you will discover what is wrong and how to mitigate or how to improve that. There is no proper advice to give to you. My advice will be communicate together, sit down on a table with a multidisciplinary profile people. You have any type of people, logistic, patient, even patient, and talk together and try to see what is the best approach to improve the area of weakness or what you can improve in your own supply chain management. There is no one solution. There is several solutions. But what I can recommend you, it's just have a look about the risk management ISO 31000. Have a look about the manual, about the method, just to list the risk of each of the activity. For example, if you want to distribute medicines in your country, just be sure that if there is a problem on distribution, no, it starts from product selection, as I told you. The supply chain management is quite a lot of activity and very complex. Start with the very beginning and go step by step to identify the problems you are facing. It's not because you identify the problem over there that the problem is there. Maybe it's behind that or before that or right before or right after. So you need to analyze that on a systemic way, not one specific activity. And yes, we cover that in our courses again.
Thank you, Mr. Manodi. The next question is, in the process of adding a new supplier for azithromycin, which means multiple brands of the generic drug will be distributed within the same setting or community, from your experience, what are the best strategies to manage the distribution of different brands in a way that ensures consistency in treatment, minimizes confusion among healthcare workers and beneficiaries, and maintains public health trust in the program?
Well, that's again a big question. There is no proper advice. You need to consider the distribution of medicines like water flowing in a river. Cannot stop. If you stop that in one way or another, the water will stop going to where it should go. So generics are very important because they are cost effective. And you need to ensure that the flow of the delivery of these medicines is correct from the very beginning to the end. And there is no proper, let's say, proper strategy for that because we are talking about supply chain management, which is a lot of activities. If one of the activities stops, you need to identify which activity stops and you need to reactivate this activity and readjust this activity. So what do you need? You need just to plan, to assess, to plan, to implement, and to monitor. So if you find any issue during this process, that's mean you fail somewhere and you need to identify where. So it's difficult for me to give any advice on that specific question, especially in so short time.
We have two more questions. Does the country need to have a standard tool to compute the risk management, or they need to get it from the reliable sources?
Sorry, what was it?
The question is, does the country need to have a standard tool to compute the risk management, or they need to get that tool, I believe, from the reliable sources, like agencies or organizations?
About risk management, you mean about you?
I think the question is on the risk management tool, yes.
Okay, the risk management.
The
problem it's many countries doesn't know what is risk management on supply chain management or let's say on the. So what you need is first to be aware about what is risk management, what is the meaning, and what are the different methods of risk management. So when you are well aware about what is a risk management, when you know how to implement a risk management strategy, you need to discuss with your government. And of course, all the government should have a strategy on risk management, on any type of risk management. We are talking about health supply, but we need risk management on everything. All ministries should have a risk management method and a strategy. So the tools doesn't belong necessarily to the government, but if you are working for an organization, either you use the government tool if they have, or you build your own tool. That means learning about the manual or the different method of risk management.
Thank you. We'll take two more questions. One is any advocacy strategy or experience for the resilient public health supply chain in dealing with leaders from the private sector background to get win-win situation or South-South triangular cooperation?
I think I didn't get the question. If you can show me the question, I can read it.
Of course,
The
I'll
sound is
send it.
not okay. Yes, I any advocacy strategy or experience for the resilient public health supply chain. You need the private sector. That's mean every time we try let's say to compete between the private sector and public sector. What we use in Empower and UNITAR, it's every time we learn from the private sector, because the private sector, they have leaders. They used to have leadership. If they don't have leadership in a private sector, we are facing issue. The private sector, they make money. If you don't have leaders in the private sector, that's mean you fail and you don't make money, and you close the door and the company shut down. So you need the public health sector needs to learn from the private sector, and the public health system need to use the private sector to evolve, to strengthen their own strategy. Without the private sector, it's not possible to work, let's say, efficiently. Let's say in RDC, for example, in Congo, the public sector is working with the private sector. Why? Because they have transport. Why? Because they have warehouses. So they can help the public sector to strengthen their strategy of supply chain management. But at the same time, the private sector, they have leaders, and they can learn from these leaders how to become the proper leader in a public sector. So they need to cooperate and to coordinate, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Tamanuti. Thank you for addressing these important questions. Before we wrap up, I would like to take a moment to recognize the incredible value brought by you today. I'd also like to remind that webinar is recorded. We've received a few more questions about it, and you received a YouTube link. For the courses, you'll also receive links to the Empower School of Health courses offered in global health procurement and supply chain management. Before we wrap up, I'll also like you to participate in a poll that came out on your screens a bit earlier, but please launch. Okay, we had 164, maybe a few other participants can participate in it, and I'll read out the results. This is just to understand and get your feedback on the session. While we do that, I will read out the preliminary results. So 96% of participants found this session useful and interesting, and they are interested in exploring the health courses. Mostly they're interested in data management and supply chain, followed by global health, pharmaceutical management, and health leadership. And mostly interested in online certificate and master's courses, followed by online diploma and PGD. Thank you so much, dear participants. Please now join me in extending a heartfelt thank you again to our keynote speaker today, to Nicolas Stevanuti, and to all of you, dear participants, for joining us today. We hope to see you again in 2 weeks when UNITAR and Empower will host another webinar. And thanks again.
Thank you all. Take care. Merci.